Hello and welcome to today's webinar, where we will be talking about self-administered pension schemes and specifically how they can help you fund your own property investment development portfolio. A bit of housekeeping to start with. We will be sending you a recording at the end of the event, and there will be a live Q&A at the end. We can just put your hand up and we'll answer any questions and ask you to join us. So, in my 20 years in property, I've never seen so much change and opportunity for the entrepreneurial property investor or developer. There's planning relaxation with the likes of Class MA coming in August, making it easier to convert buildings without the rigours of the planning process. There's things like the aggregation of use classes with the likes of Class E, making it much more fluid what you can do with a property. And clearly there's been an awful lot of change in our lives, working from home, technology adoption, electric cars even, and buying online, you name it, hardly a single area of our lives has been untouched. And at Nimbus, we're seeing the most entrepreneurial property professionals really starting to plan ahead, choosing and honing their buying strategies, joining us on online events and starting to find and assess great opportunities. Because they know with a little time and effort up front, they will definitely reap the rewards by buying the best sites at the right price at the right time. To help me with this topic today, I've invited along Kevin Whelan from WealthBuilders, who has several very interesting ways in which you can use pension funds to build your portfolio, and my colleague Andrew, who will share some strategies on where you can invest these funds. Hi Kevin, how are you doing today?
Yeah, good to see you, and thanks for the invitation, and congratulations on your 5 years anniversary, by the way.
Thank you very much. Hi Andrew, how are you doing? You okay?
Hi Simon, very good, thank you, very good.
Perfect. So first of all, let me just stop sharing. Kevin, may I just ask you a quick question? It's one we sort of ask our attendees. It's sort of, why do you do what you do, and why do you love it?
Oh, in terms of SaaS, I'm an evangelical broadcaster of all things SaaS. Sure. So on behalf of company I've founded and formed, I think it's all about helping people get intellectual and financial shortcuts to help them get wealthier, faster, safer, and more enjoyably. And if we can do that and share some insights today. And by the way, I'm going to show you the cheapest source of funding, bar none, today.
And Andrew's going to find you some of the best property opportunities to put that funding into. So,
yeah, match me in heaven.
Perfect. Right. So, Kevin, do you want to start your presentation? If is that okay? Share your screen. I think
sure. Give me 1 second to do that. Yeah. Let's bring that up, and then just let me know it's all systems go with a thumbs up, just to all good. All right, fair enough. So I mentioned WealthBuilders, which does what it says on the tin. It's not wealth reducers. We don't try and spend money for people just to pay us to do things. It's all about helping people create, build, and protect their wealth. And every time we do that, we always begin with the end in mind, which is obviously Stephen Covey's quote. And everybody's got a number. I mean, nobody's into property because they want to be into property. They're into property for a reason. And more often than not, it's aligned with the wealth of that person. And I always ask people to think about what's the number that they have in mind. Is it, well, I want 10 HMOs, or do I want 20,000 a month, or is it 50 apartments in the next 12 months? You know, what's the kind of primary thing that you're trying to solve? And once you know that, then of course you can start to create a plan to make that happen. And what I hope to share today is just some insights. And of course, I'll give some real things you can take away and do as well. So let's just move on. And the thing that I want to say is it's people who finance property. And when you think about where money comes from, it always emanates and flows from people. So money in the bank flows from people. Money in bridging flows from people. So it begins with people and then usually goes through a process and then finds you as the end user. And I'm going to say, well, maybe that's not right. Maybe we can remove the intermediation and connect people directly to property. And I think that's what we do so well. And when you do that, you bring power into play and leverage into play that most people don't really appreciate or understand. Just a couple of words of credibility, nothing more. I'm an expert in this field and a funder, so as Andrew was saying, a match made in heaven. I suppose you could call me a wizened Cilla Black, you know, matchmaking people who've got money to people who've got projects. And there's just an elegant way of doing that. And I'm delighted that I've done hundreds and hundreds of joint ventures, which kind of means that I think I understand the hearts and minds of investors. And I'm going to share some insights today that I think most developers, people who are trying to find money for projects, find insightful. And while I haven't written a book on that subject, I have written 3 other books, but that's just, you know, so you know, I'm kind of in this space really, in the wealth space. Another Stephen Covey quote though is, seek first to understand before being understood. And I rarely find this to be true in the field of raising money and raising finance. And I'm only going to talk about raising finance from private funding today. I'm not going to talk about bridging funding. I'm not going to talk about banks, or I'm not a mortgage broker, so I'm not interested in those things, although it's all part of a debt stack. I think normally what I see is, instead of taking the time to nurture and build long-term relationships, we see the very opposite of that played out in meetings all across the country, whether they're online or offline. And it's 2 people speaking different languages, 2 people speaking different speeds. I wonder if you could work it out who's who here, Simon. I mean, if we got, imagine a networking meeting where somebody's rat-tat-tat-tat, 90 miles an hour. I found this a fantastic deal. It's too good to be true. And I need the money in 3 weeks' time. Against somebody who's listening, trying to take it all in, trying to get a sense of what's going on. And usually the developer speaking 90 miles an hour, the investor, potential investor, is speaking 30 miles an hour or listening at 30 miles an hour. And both of them have a sense of loss. The developer doesn't want to lose the deal and the investor doesn't want to lose their money. And usually what happens is very little. There's a lot of silence after the event, you know, lots of enthusiasm, normally from the rose-tinted spectacles of the developer, but that's about it. And I'm not sure it's the right way to do it. So I'm going to try and explain a different way to do it. And the different way to do it is really to start thinking about solving problems. And this is the artistry of being an entrepreneur, is how do you solve a problem? Well, if you're trying to raise money, then you've got to look at what's the problem you're trying to solve. Well, think about from the investor's viewpoint. What does the investor have? Well, the investor's got money in the bank, not earning much. The investor's got money in their investments or in their pensions. They probably don't know what they're earning, actually. More often than not, they don't know at all. But let's say on average, in the long term, people are getting about 6%. And the charges will net it down to 2. Take 2 off as 4, which is kind of an interesting JV in itself. I've often thought that in this world of intermediation, where we've got intermediaries charging 2%, which is like a third of your return for putting none of the money in, taking none of the money, none of the risk, and then no value if something goes wrong, you know, you can't hold them accountable. It's very interesting. So people who've got money are not happy. And I've noticed that they're not happy. Whereas you guys out there, you guys and girls who are diligently finding property, you know, using great tools like Nimbus and funding through various ways of funding, and then fixing the property and filling the property and finally getting the funds flowing into you, you've got a process going on. But think about this one. What kind of returns are you getting? And the chances are you're getting returns way, way, way in excess of what people are getting in the bank and in pension. And I'm not interested so much in you knowing what those returns are right now, but would they be between 10 and 20 maybe? Well, if let's say they are, if you can get between 10 and 20% on your money, and I'm getting 1 or I'm getting 4, can you tell me why people are not beating down your door to have you share in that great return? And the real 2 reasons are a lack of education about the alternatives and trust. And it's so difficult to build trust when all developers tend to do is speak at people. So I'm going to show you today how to become so super investable, so irresistible to private investors that you'll be shocked at how easy it is to create a waiting list of people wanting to lend to you as opposed to the opposite. And this is where money is at. People have got money in all sorts of different places, all in their life in various ways. But you wouldn't bump into someone at a networking meeting and ask them to raise their home equity and take a mortgage out to lend you money, would you really? You wouldn't start there. Most people start with cash. But I would say the best place to start, in my experience, and this is going to be a bit surprising, by far, is to go through the big yellow door. So join me as we go through the big yellow door and solve the problem of the investor. Now, the investor, by the way, for you, the size of that pot, of the locked pensions that are out there, not doing much, rising and falling on the stock market, 2.2 trillion. Now, that doesn't mean much, right? But you know what? That's the size of the whole GDP of the country. So it's like the value of pensions is the exact amount of money, almost, that we turn over as a country in a whole year. That is monstrously huge. And yet you as developers are probably, if you like most people, not paying attention at all. Yet most of those people are in pain. They're frustrated with their money. They're disconnected. Think about it yourself. Are you one of those people? Have you got money? You've had a statement. You look at the statement. You wish it were better. You file it. You put it back in a drawer very neatly, I'm sure. But is that what you do? Did you get disconnected? Well, many people are. And my job as the spokesperson at WealthBuilders is to get people connected to their money. And two ways to do that. One is for them to connect the money to their own projects. So this could be true of you. And two is you can get connected to other people's money. And this is where we speak a new language. Now, it's important to say that when we're building wealth in all of its guises, you just introduced, Simon, the idea of the new permission groups. And there's lots of language you learn when you build your wealth. And this is just another one that you should learn and become SaaS savvy. Speak a little bit of SaaS. Try and help yourself understand some of the language. Now, small means it's a pension scheme for a business of less than 12 people. That's what small means. And because it's small, it's only for small companies, but that's okay because we're small people. Then we've got some privileges that you don't get with any other kind of a pension. And self-administered scheme means it's yours. You own it. You control it. Your name's on the letterhead now. It belongs to you. So you get to control what you want to do. Yes, you can get some help with the paperwork, just like you do with a company. You don't do all your bookkeeping in your own accounts, probably. Somebody does that. But this is just a way to understand that it's a way to get control of that money. So you can, instead of profiting the financial services industry and supporting that business, you support your own business instead. And that's what a SaaS is all about. And so how do you get access to that money? Well, there are a number of different ways. I'm going to talk about three: the buy, the bridge, and the borrow. Now, the buy means you could take that money, and by the way, you can combine it with other people. So if you've got a spouse or a partner, business partners, up to 12, so 11 people, it's relatively big family, relatively medium-sized business, then you can buy things. And here's an example of one of my clients who has gone through this journey, a guy called Mark, corporate background. And he said to me, Kevin, I was in the pension wilderness. I used to get my statement, just like I described earlier on, and wished it were better. And 25 years I did this, year after year, repeating the same thing. But since he took the control of that money, and he's a developer now, and used that money in developments, it took 25 years to build it and 24 months to double it. That's the power of using the money for yourself. And what can you do? Well, pretty much anything. You want to do commercial offices? These are 3 offices he bought in cash with the money, pooled with 4 others, or 3 others actually. You can do com to resi, big things coming up with that planning permission as well. Bought a shopping precinct, and not only used his own money, but this is the important thing to bear in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that it's other people's SSASs, other people's pensions that you can unlock as well as your own. And that's what he's done. The bridge strategy is basically, instead of having the bridging company, the pension and the developer become a bridge to each other. So here's an example. A client of mine, Chris and Tracy, cautious people, ex-bankers actually. Interestingly enough, Chris says, I won't do the Yorkshire accent, but he says, you know, I used to be a banker, now I'm a bank. And now I lend my money as a bank, and I'm having far much fun doing it. And this is a connection I made in my blind date game, where I connected him to a guy called Christopher. So sorry, they're both called Chris, but there you go. And he'd run out of money. You know, he had 150 rooms, wanted to carry on and do more, but had kind of struck a glass ceiling, if you like, because you have to leave money in the deals, HMOs he was doing. And what happened? Well, Chris and Tracy loaned money to Christopher, and they got a 12% return on their money. And Chris, who was brilliant at what he does, which is why I chose him, was getting a 30% return on his, which is quite a big number, but brilliant at what he does. Consequently, both parties got a massive, massive gain. Now think about what was that gain before. What was happening when that money was dormant? Nobody was gaining. Only the financial services industry was gaining. And this has created incredible power and value. Borrow. Now I said to you, gentlemen, I'm going to show you the cheapest form of funding. And by the way, the underwriting procedure is a 30-minute conversation you have with yourself. You don't even need to take 30 minutes. You could do it in 10. But essentially it's this, that if you own your own pension, it's under your control and stewardship, you can lend up to 50% back to your own limited company at 1% over base as a minimum interest rate. So what's base rate, I hear you ask? Well, it's 0.1. So it means you can borrow at 1.1 and a little bit. So you have to round it up to the nearest quarter. So 1.25. I don't know about you. I don't know too many mortgage brokers who can get me an interest rate of 1.25. By the way, I become the lender and the borrower. So I'm paying myself back. So my money goes in a very virtuous circle, just like this. So the SSAS makes a loan to the company, who makes repayments, who makes, you know, and the whole value goes round and round and round. And this is called the SSAS loan back. Another bit of language there for you, but the SSAS loan back is probably the most popular strategy we see in the wealth builder community. And again, this is what Chris did. And he used the money from a loan back, which he was paying 1.5%, and made that income outside the pension, because the money went to the company. Now the company's made the profit. The pension's getting the interest rate back, but the money's made by the company, which means the income comes to you. So it comes to him way before he was due that payment from his pension. So it's access to the money for projects, but access to income for your company. This is where relationships and empathy come in. Now I knew that. And I knew why Chris wanted that money. He didn't want to leave a long-term legacy as the priority. He wanted money now. And that's because he's got a daughter. Now, his daughter suffers from a condition known as cystic fibrosis, which means he describes it as she lives her life as if she's breathing through a straw, which is not really great in COVID situations. However, that money has now enabled her to get a property. Now, they didn't buy this property, so I'm not saying they bought this property, they did not. But by having spare cash, it's enabled her to get somewhere to live that he could fuel and fund from money that he couldn't have touched till he was in his 60s. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is priceless. That's an ROI you cannot fathom until you get into the hearts and minds of people and start to recognize that money flows from people. So why pensions then? Why not just use other private lending? Why go into this niche? This niche is so critical because pensions don't compete with cash. If people have got cash, they're worried about COVID, they're worried about lockdown, they're worried about furlough, they're worried. They want to keep their cash precious. It's harder to get that money. Now, a little bit of knowledge, look how much you've learned in how long we've been on now, 20 minutes maybe. You know, you've learned a new language, you've learned about loan back, you've learned about all sorts of things. How much more knowledge would you get if you just invest a little bit more time in just learning why people with pensions want something better, and maybe that solution is you. Because they're already at risk, aren't they? If I've got my money in my pension in the stock market, I'm already taking a risk. Would I rather take that risk with you and share in the values and the value that you bring? I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment or two, as I share with you how they repeat and repeat and repeat. 9 loans took place between Chris and Chris, 9. You don't need many investors if you can find one person to lend to you 9 times. And that's the joy again of that relationship. It's not that hard. I know it looks easy as I'm describing it. It's not that hard if you can understand what investors think and how they think. And if there's one thing you could take away, if there's one thing you could learn from this session with me today, it's this: that people need 5 ROIs. Right? This is my IP, so please don't steal it. Use it. If you use it in this format, give me credit or my lawyers will come at you. But don't worry about it. It's there for you to use. The first thing investors want is the return of their investment at 12 o'clock there. They want the return of their money more than anything else. So all you've got to do is show them how you keep yourself safe. And then that shows them how you're keeping their self safe. The second is return on intellect. It means people don't understand what's going on in the stock market. They don't know how to add value. They don't know how value is even created. It's a dark art, if you like. And they don't know how to deal with that dark art. But you know how to deal with property, and you know there's security. You know there's less volatility. Of course, there's risk. Everybody knows there's risk. But if you could educate people on the risk and give them knowledge, remember the lend and learn I showed you a few minutes ago. The third is return on interaction. People want to feel connected, never more than today. There's a feeling of experience, a feeling of wanting to connect. And that's why I like kind of what Nimbus are doing. They're saying, well, how can we help you? They're not saying buy this software. They're saying, well, what can we do to create value for you? What can we do to help you find more property, to fund more property, and so on? How do you do that in your business? Then a return on impact. Again, never more important. Social impacts, sustainability, green. What type of tenant are you supporting? Are you helping veterans? Are you dealing with supported living? What are you doing that is good business as well as good for society? And then the final one is the return on investment. Now, my experience, if you deal with somebody who's an angel or you deal with somebody who's an institutional lender, they only want that. That's all they want. They don't want those other things. But because private investors want these things, if you can deliver those things, you'll be able to secure that money far less than you think, often in the range of 8 to 10%. And we're now seeing our developer partners funding their entire operations now using SaaS money, not just their own. So don't forget your own if you might be the sort of person who has got a frozen or forgotten pension stuck somewhere, but you can bring that to life. But also when you do that, you also learn something which you can share with others, which is that return on intellect. And I'm only scratching the surface with you today because there are 3 sources of funding. So I like to see people deal with their time in a kind of balanced way. Find the deals, fund the deals, find the deals, fund the deals. And there are 3 steps to that: the before, during, and after. Now, I'm not going to spend any time on the during and after today because we're limited for time. But of course, you can build a relationship and connect with me, and that's fine. I'm going to show you the before, because the before is when you need to build the trust. And I've created a set of documents that I call the 10 pillars of trust. These are the key points you need to get across in a document that tells the story of your business. It tells the story through the eyes and the lens of the investor, not through yours. It's not, my business is called Wheeling and Dealing, and we've been in business for 25 years and we've done this, 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 and this. No. It comes from the point of we work with investors to share the long-term value of property. as a better, safer, more enjoyable alternative than putting all of their money at risk in the stock market. And if you can just start to think about how you can do that, and I'll touch on some of those, so great to get your team involved and to let people know who's in your team. Obviously, people want to know about your track record, but not in a self-serving way, in a way that shows how you've dealt with risk and how you've managed risk. Testimonials from investors and different ways that you can provide that experience. And if you want to give some contribution wider to the world, all of those things. Anyway, I've got the templates you can see, and here's some examples. Here's a developer that we helped who had such beautiful buildings, and we kind of worked with him and said, this is like bringing historical buildings into new use. Why don't you use that as the flavor for what you do? And he started to do it this way. So created a beautiful set of documents that spoke to the investors. And you can see there what he's saying. This is just like a couple of pages of a snapshot from each one. So real developers are telling the story. You can see here, this is IDG, building for the future and generating attractive returns. So it's talking about returns, not saying what those returns are, because you can't do that. It's not saying we give you 8, 10, 12, whatever. It's just saying we work with private investors to give returns. And this is just his opening page. Here's another group we deal with, which is Mark, actually, who I showed you earlier on. Now, he's brought SaaS to life in his document, saying we work with SaaS investors. We encourage SaaS investment. We've actually worked with many SaaS investors, and this is how we do it. So it's just about learning a new way of crafting the message, not from the point of view of talking the deal, but really talking about what's in it for the investor. So I will share with you, if you want, this is my co-director, Paul Brooks at WealthBuilders, who's written a guide called 7 Reasons Why Every Property Professional Must Consider a SaaS pension, not just for themselves, but to get access to other people's money too. And we'll send you that document, plus videos about SaaS, and also the templates as well, the ones that I just mentioned. So a whole raft of things. And all you need to do that is drop an email at hello@wealthbuilders.co.uk. So not difficult, really quite straightforward. I hope a whistle-stop tour of why SaaS would be a good thing for you to consider for yourself and do a JV with yourself. You don't have to find somebody you like. You could just do it yourself, or you can work with other people as well. So we're experts in this field. We're also looking for partners to work with. So if you're outstanding at what you do, or have got an aspiration to be outstanding at what you do, again, reach out to hello@wealthbuilders.co.uk. I hope that's done something. I can go into my Zen mode now, Simon, if
calm down. Well, if it's okay, Kevin, I've got a few questions, but maybe if we let Andrew do a few bits about why are some of these strategies, but fundamentally, I mean, there's a wealth of, I guess, options if you've got a SaaS to buy those opportunities yourself, as you said, to tap back into your network. So if you've got, we have, I suppose, 2 cohorts of people at Nimbus, those that have got money and looking for properties, and there's lots of people with lots of property opportunities and they want money to unlock them. And as you said, I think we're very much aligned and we're trying to help people achieve their property investment development goals. So if we can align those groups of people, like you said with Cilla Black, and have a Laura laughs on the way. But,
hey, saw what you did there.
Well, I know. So if we can sort of connect these people together, then we can unlock, these development opportunities. And hopefully, Andrew, we'll answer some questions at the end, but hopefully Andrew will show that I think there's an awful lot of opportunity out there right here, right now to generate value, and generate value means you can obviously return those. So Andrew, is it okay if you perhaps give us a bit of a
yeah. I mean,
stop tour some of the strategies that we think are hot at the moment and things. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just share my screen. As Kevin mentioned, I think with those different ways of accessing that SaaS finance, ultimately you can go out and obviously buy property. You can then obviously work with developers and all of those kind of things. So I can sort of talk through a couple of examples of then how where Nimbus Maps can come in and help you find one, those sites, or two, developers who then are active in that particular area. Now, I would, in the interest of time, unless we'll see how quickly people can respond. If someone responds very quickly, we'll go and have a look in that area. So if you want to sort of shout out a location, we'll do a quick search in that particular Cardiff, right? Thank you, Bobby. Cardiff. So ultimately, like I said, today isn't about going through the detail of Nimbus Maps. So if you are new to Nimbus Maps, we have got a session on Thursday where we're going to go through a full demonstration of the platform. So if you are a bit unsure as to what things are doing and everything else, then Thursday's session is absolutely for you. This is just to sort of talk through some of those sort of key elements as to how we find some of those basically popular strategies that we see right now. Now, we've gone to Cardiff. I think the first thing we want to do is understand where do we want to focus once we get to Cardiff. And that's where then we look at the market overlays and we sort of say, right, well, where are the sort of higher value areas within Cardiff? So we might want to then say, right, actually, it seems to be the further to the north here seems to be the sort of slightly sort of higher value areas. So these are the average residential values. So again, if we're trying to sort of say, look, that whole commercial to residential, which we see as absolutely pretty much arguably the best time ever for commercial to residential. You've got Class MA coming forward from the 1st of August. So that allows you to change from Class E. You'll have to bear with me with the different classes. It's just the way the planning system works. You've got Class E, which is all your office use, retail, up to what was old A1 to 3. I think some other uses in there as well, but essentially that office and retail are the key ones. They're now all in Class E. Class E can now be switched to residential as long as it meets certain criteria. And ultimately, that's where I think there's going to be a lot of focus, because there's a lot of areas in the country where you've not been able to do that. And now with Class MA, it's going to really unlock a lot of property in the country. And it's basically for those developers who are ready to act now and not wait 6 months down the line, because the proactive developers will snap them up and investors as well, because it's not only just switching to residential. But so if we want to do that, we've got that in mind of saying, right, we want to be flipping to residential. Where do we want to focus? And, we can see there's some sort of really sort of high values here. So again, you might want to be sort of thinking, where are those strategies? Where do I want to be? But ultimately, for me, I'm thinking I want to be high values. The more residential sort of headroom there is, in terms of, if we're trying to develop for £300 a square foot, we know even with a slightly higher build cost or a couple of delays in the build, whatever, you've got more than enough room to cope with that, So
that's not building at £300. That's the exit value. That's the residential values of that's the sale price of a rate square foot.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you're buying a property, you've got an expectation of a significant profit. Obviously, the potential profits are going to be higher with the higher pound per square foot on that exit value. That it just gives you more freedom to cope with build cost changes and all that kind of stuff. The other thing on there as well is then maybe the HMOs. So even though this is a sort of high value area here, we can actually see that the HMOs are well and truly concentrated in this central part of Cardiff here. So whereas actually then maybe sort of down towards this part of town sort of seems to be sort of the secondary most popular area, and maybe then close to the hospital, which is always normally a good thing here. So maybe we want to be sort of focusing somewhere here, but if we've got HMOs in mind, then actually maybe sort of coming back into central town. What were the values like round here? So this is probably not too bad actually. £289 a square foot, lots of HMOs. So maybe this gives us then lots of potential exit opportunities for developing out in this particular area. Because ultimately, if we want to be looking at, that minimizing that planning risk, then we want to be then focusing on permitted development rights. And how we go about doing those, there's a couple of ways in Nimbus Maps. First and foremost is just using the filters, going into essentially the uses filter here and saying, right, well, I want to find an office that I want to convert to residential. I want to find some retail that I want to convert to residential. For the example here, we'll focus on retail. And simply, we're just going to search in this area here, I'll explain a lot more detail about the filters and all that on Thursday, so don't get too worried if I'm going too quickly to understand. But ultimately what we're trying to do here now is find where are all the retail properties within this search area. So I'm searching 750 meters from there, and well, we're a little bit over in this center. Let's come back over just into this area here. And then what this should hopefully do, a bit like you can see there, obviously the middle of Cardiff is full of retail property, but actually in this part of town, we can now see there's a sort of main sort of thoroughfare through there, but also this sort of secondary point through here in sort of Cathedral Road, which sort of looks a bit more interesting. And now we can start to then maybe then focus on something which maybe isn't in that main run of shops. And we've just got this sort of one-off opportunity. We can click on there, brings up the information panel. This is essentially that sort of headline information against that particular property. But the real key bit, if you're looking for that commercial to residential opportunities, is then focusing on this sort of commercial uses, size and rates assessment. And it gives you a full breakdown of that particular property and what they're paying as a rateable value right now. And we can see here, obviously there's that zone A rents on the bottom there, and you can see this rateable value, which, you know, on average is £6, but you can see the main bit of that shop right at the front there is 26. That's where all the value is on this rateable value. So 6,500 of the 8,700 that they're paying is all in the front. And the rateable value is indicative of what the rent is. So you know that the rent, and therefore the value of this shop, is all based in that front bit. And what we're actually interested in is this bit up here on the first floor. So on the first floor, they're using it as a workshop. There's 630 square feet currently using that workshop. And they're currently paying, well, £820 in rateable value. Now, that's £1.30 per square foot. A little rule of thumb, just to get a bit of a sort of indicative idea of the existing use value, multiply that by 15, and it will give you an indication of what the capital value is for that particular first floor. So in this instance, you know, 1.5, you know, we'll call it sort of £45 a square foot. So £40 to £45 a square foot to acquire that, essentially that just upper floor, when the area, if we come back to that market overlay, is, what was this one, £289 a square foot. So we're going from essentially £45 a square foot in this upper floor here, in this section here, to £300 a square foot. So as Kevin mentioned, you know, when you find the right developments and you're targeting the right areas, the returns can be very significant, and let's face it, a lot more significant than 1.25%. And so that's where you then want to end up in a discussion with this particular owner here and say, well, look, I want to take your building. Obviously, you probably want to take the whole building, because then you can then relook and see what we can do with the ground floor as well, especially if it's reliant on this workshop on the first floor. Convert the upper parts into, in this instance, you might get away with 2 one-bed flats. It might be a bit too small for that. It depends whether there's a bit extra space you can sort of add on to this particular building. That's where things like the master map comes in, to get a bit more of a feel to see whether there's anything else we could do with this particular building here. Not only you've got other little tools allowing you to sort of see what's going on with the building on the front as well. Once we sort of scroll around and see, and it's this little thing here. It's a stringed instrument shop there, and that's their little thing there. So not only that, you've got airspace. So to be honest, you know, I'm conscious of time. I don't want to sort of take too much time, but given you've got a 2-story building next door, which, you know, is a significantly higher roof height, then arguably maybe there's potential to sort of do a bit extra with this building as well and get a bit more headroom, maybe at the back of the building. But so that is a very simple way of finding those opportunities. You know, we've hit a bit lucky there, but obviously we can click around, we can scroll down, and we can see, right, are there any other opportunities? In this particular instance, there's nothing on the upper parts. So if we want to acquire it to convert the upper parts, this isn't going to be a potential opportunity for us. But likewise, there's one here, but there's only 15 square feet of kitchen, which seems a very small kitchen, but there's the rest of the kitchen up there as well. So again, not really a great opportunity. So we basically struck quite lucky with that one. But what we can do is we have basically what's called Elite Plus strategies. And this arguably takes all the hard work out of it. So the work I've just done there to try and find that one, I can simply toggle this on and it will then find where those other opportunities are. So if I come back to here and turn these polygons off, it's now then telling us where those opportunities are and the potential profits that can be made by redeveloping those particular properties. So in this instance here, there's actually 1,000 square foot on the upper parts. So in this instance, under class G of the PD rights, we can convert the upper parts to residential, and this would be perfect. 2 flats, 500 square foot each. You could develop that out, acquire and develop for about £115 a square foot. Residential values slightly higher in this little neighborhood. So when we do this calculation, we take a slightly smaller area rather than the overlay. That's coming out at 320. So when you multiply all that out by that 1,000 square feet, the difference between the costs and the exit values are now 200,000 on that particular property. So you can see there, and then not only that, that's converting into 2 flats, but what we can also now do is use class L to convert the residential to HMO as well, because we know this area was popular with HMOs. Not only that, we've then got some other Elite Plus strategies, HMOs as well. So if we toggle this on, we should see, yeah, all of these ones here that are highlighted and marked up now, they are all HMOs. And so basically with this particular unit that was on the corner here, we know if we convert that to residential using class G, we can also then convert it to HMO using class L. And then not only then have we turned in some flats, which you could be renting out at, let's just have a quick look. Market rates, residential yield. We could be renting those out at 5% or just over 5%. You could be looking to sort of pretty much double that with being HMOs in terms of that return. So now, not only that, have you redeveloped it, massively increased the value of the property, but now you can then maximize the return that you're going to get from those renting out those properties as well. So rent them out as HMOs rather than as standalone flats, and maximize that. And ultimately,
Kevin, as well, I guess it would say fair to say that investors, it's a lower risk, isn't it? Because you're only taking an existing building, you're not knocking it down and starting from scratch. So to sort of fund something like that, it's a much lower risk from you basically changing uses as opposed to changing the buildings other than a bit of a cosmetic refurb. So the risk for investors, I guess, on the bridge stuff, it's a lot lower risk reward. So the higher,
Yeah.
Good return, but low risk.
Well, if you think what Andrew was saying a minute ago, which was you're able to buy something for £50 a square foot and generate £300 a square foot worth of value, yet nobody knows how to do that in a day in the stock market.
No.
But if you can show that this is evidence-based, you're looking at it through proper data, which is backed up. You've got that evidence, you can show them, and this is all part of that ROI of return on intellect. If you show people where the value is, they get it. If you tell it, they think it's too good to be true. So it's best if especially if you can show people, this is how you do it. If you show them your Nimbus Maps and say, this is what I do, this is the quality of the work that I do and the research behind me. So
well, we've got
builds trust, isn't it?
We've got the exports as well that give you the sort of for your point of view to do your due diligence, Kevin, or for your investors, that you've got the reports that give you the historic price paid data in a nice, easy to use format to be able to support your application. But fundamentally, I think that the strategies, how many properties are on that road, and you could spend an awful lot of time being a busy fool trying to find those, whereas of course with the data we've unearthed them.
Yeah, you're just not looking like you were before. My background is the property industry, and yeah, you'd spend a lot of your time trying to go out and find those opportunities. Now you just don't need to, you know. And now that the, you know, people are realizing these tools are there, it's just who else has the tools and who else can use them more effectively, and that's where,
And
you
they've
know,
got to act now, hasn't it? Sort of start planning, have those conversations. Because you know that tenant might be bust. You know, obviously the pandemic, they might have rent arrears. Go to an investor, and he might be delighted to get off of that property to you, and you'll be delighted to take off his hands. But he might not know there's an untapped capital gain in there. So that's the
yeah.
there are finite amounts, aren't they? So you've got to sort of act now while the iron, you know, strike the iron's hot, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, and on this particular property here, I was just about to say, you know, if we need to buy the title or not, but you know, on this particular one here, it's Thomas Dunn Investments. You know, they bought it in, well, April last year, so maybe, you know, have they bought that with a view to then redoing the upper parts? Obviously, we can check that planning in the area. They've had a lot of applications, yeah, for redevelopment. So actually, demolish and rebuild the existing vacant and dilapidated. Well, that's 95. Yeah, that's this one. So clearly this was a bit dilapidated anyway, which obviously we can't see, but we could have done that street view. So what it's showing is actually in this one, we're maybe a little bit too late. So, you know, regardless of whether people are using the software or not, you know, without the software, you're going to be a bit more inefficient, trying to pound the streets, trying to find them. It's not saying that there's lots of people out there trying to do that. Maybe Thomas Dunn do that, but ultimately getting the software gives you that massive head start. Putting this overlay on says, well, if that one's gone, what's happened to this one? And now we can then start looking up this particular one here. This one's owned by a private individual, maybe less well informed. How do I get their details? Just simply pay the £3, get access to the register. You can do it all through Nimbus Maps. You'll get it emailed to you. It will then tell you who the name and address of that owner is. You can then write to them and say, look, you know, let's work together on this one. Let's both maximize the value of that property. Obviously, then you're doing the work, accessing your own money. It's all going to be very, hopefully, straightforward. The one final quick thing I just wanted to mention as well was, obviously, if you're then maybe looking to partner with a developer, so maybe you want to sort of work with sort of site finding, or if you're just thinking, well, look, I just want to unlock my funds to find sites, but I don't want to get involved in the developing. I want to, you know, work with an experienced developer. Then how do we find those? And ultimately, we do that through the planning. You know, we want to try and find people who are active right now, who are then looking in Cardiff, and therefore want to find some things. So if I just double check, it is just Cardiff is the local authority. So all we do under that exports button, planning, let's search Cardiff. And then depending on what kind of opportunities, maybe you're saying, right, well, who are the HMO developers in this area? Then we'll click HMO. It provides all the right keywords to go and find the right applications, find the right people who are developing out HMO applications. And then what this does, I've just pressed export. So it's now going to look at the most recent applications for anything to do with HMO, pull them all into an Excel file. And as part of that, we then bring all the other information. So things like, obviously details around the application, but who owns it and what kind of planning consultants and everything that they're using. So if I just briefly show you this, and then hopefully this gives you a real good snapshot of some of the key elements around finding those kind of sites within Nimbus Maps. So here's the Excel file. Here's the link through to Cardiff's planning portal. Let me just move that out of the way. Then we have the description. So you can see here, lots of conversions, housing occupation into 4 flats. That's quite interesting. Again, trying to build this planning intelligence. We can maybe cover this a bit more on Thursday, but ultimately we can see what is going on planning wise. Then we can see obviously the status of that application. Nimbus Maps are basically checking this every 24 hours. You know, with the last one there just over just under a month ago. Then the decision date of the application, address of the property, link to where it is on the map. Then crucially, in this example here, if we're looking to partner up with a developer, now we can see who the active developers are in the area, which if I just set some filters here, then ultimately we could sort this go past all the blanks. Here are all your active developers in the area. And actually, if you want to see who is really active, then the way to do it would be then saying, right, well, who's actually bought or submitted property in the last couple of years? Let's have a look now. So now we've got, here's all your people from sort of 2021, all of that kind of stuff are all here. So Greyhawk Investments seem to be really quite active, bought a few bits in 2020, and so on and so forth. So if you're just at that point where you're looking to find sites and then just work with a developer, or potentially then work with a developer in terms of financing them, then arguably these are the people you want to be approaching, and this is who you want to be targeting to do that. Obviously in Cardiff, you know, it's probably well saying, well, I know someone who works in Nottingham. These are all the people who are active right now in Cardiff. And then the final point was just then to mention, if you want to pursue that planning and you're thinking, well, how do I go about planning? Who should I be working with to get that planning? Well, these are the active people for that as well. So these are the various planning consultants and architects who basically know how to get a planning application in Cardiff. So they know the local authority well, they know HMOs because these are the schemes that they're working on. And obviously we really want to put them to the test, and obviously we can go back along all the way to the start, and we could look up how many have actually been approved and not approved. So planning permission to be refused. So let's not focus on those first.
I know exactly. Well, you look at how active they are, how successful they are as well, isn't it? So who the
yeah. So then we come back along. So SK Design seems to have got a few approved there, didn't they? So so maybe SK Designs in Cardiff is going to be top of the list in terms of who to contact for that. So that's that secondary way in terms of, you know, either you can do it yourself, or if you want to work with a developer, then ultimately, which is the bridge element, then that's the way to find those as well.
But I think, Andrew, it's fair to say we do realise there's an awful lot to take in. That's where we've got the Thursday. And Patrick, he's asked if we could look in Brighton, but I think what I suggested, we put the link on, and we're more than happy to use Brighton as an example on Thursday to run through and do similar sort of projects. I think we can't do that, but I mean, it literally lifts up the bonus of any location in terms of values, in terms of who the movers and shakers. So if you, whatever your strategy might be with your SSAS, I guess, Kevin, whether you want to buy it yourself and that you choose a location, or you choose your strategy, or whether you want to bridge another developer, you can see, again, you can see the success of that developer, of how many properties they've really truly acquired and how they've done in planning, rather than just rely on their say so and the rest of it. So you can do your own due diligence around their success rates and the rest of it. If it's if it's a pre-planning deal, or you know, if you want to borrow from yourself and do your own developments, again, you can choose your strategy.
Well, it's something I've learned actually, which is quite fascinating as well, because you know, we're all lifelong learners. I didn't know that you could use this tool to evaluate, you know, the activity of different developers, which then goes to back up the due diligence on plan that, you know, we never thought about using Nimbus to do that, but so that's an incredible insight. So I appreciate it.
Playfully say that I've learned a lot about SSAS today that I didn't know about. So it goes both ways, these events. So that's why I think, you know, and again, this is why we love sharing this intel, because every time you sit on something, you learn something, don't you? So, but yeah, that due diligence, not only in terms of the capital values, but also who's actually genuinely doing stuff. And I guess the data doesn't really lie. You know, that's the beauty of it. You can truly lift up the bonnet. So so that's great. Are you happy, Andrew? Is there anything else you wanted to share? Or is that
yeah, no, so I mean, I think, like I say, we'll do a session on Thursday, which will give a full demonstration of the platform. So if there are other places people want to search, and a bit more, well, that went really quickly and I didn't understand what you did there, then that's the time to do that on Thursday. What we're also thinking of doing on Friday is a bit of a deals clinic. We seem to sort of get a few more requests around, well, I'm looking at a particular site. Does this work? Does that work? If you are interested in the deals clinic, do feel free to just drop in the chat or in the Q&A, just saying interested. And if there's a bit of enough response, then we'll put a session on Friday with Paul, who's also the co-founder, who arguably has done a lot of the building of Nimbus Maps, to then run through. I'll maybe sit with Paul as well. We'll run through, we'll sort of assess people's sites and give a bit of a sort of feedback on, you know, what they can and can't do and all of that kind of stuff. So just another another session there. Whereas I think, yeah, Thursday we'll focus a bit more on finding and all of that kind of stuff. But we know there's a lot of people who said, well, I've got this particular one and it's got this unique thing about it. Well, then we'll do a session on Friday if there's enough interest. And I've seen it flashing up there with a lot of people. So
I'm sure. Why wouldn't you be? You know, you're going to learn something, particularly if it's looking at data which is relevant to you rather than just case studies where you might not see the direct relevance. So very powerful.
Cool.
Yeah, and the final point is then, like I say, is yeah, make the most of it now. I think if there's people umming and ahhing around signing up, then for the next 2 weeks to celebrate our 5th year anniversary, we've got a deal on at the moment. So you know, in terms of getting access to that data and being able to provide that credibility to people going forward, then you know, now really is the time to take advantage. You know, certainly over the next couple of weeks. So. Yeah,
if people want to take a trial, there's a 14-day free trial as well. So if people want to have a kick the tires of it before your event on Thursday or Friday and have a play around just to get themselves comfortable, hopefully I'll put that on for everybody to sign up to the 14-day free trial. And again, the team is we're really passionate about helping people achieve their goals. And same with Kevin's passionate about helping people maximize their wealth through property. We are equal, and you know, there's customer support team, there's people who are happy to do demos and stuff like that to help you on that journey. Don't be frightened to put in the chat on the live chat and things like that in the platform. They're here to help you achieve your goals. That's what we're here to do. So so yes. So is it okay if we perhaps jump on some questions? I think that's about an hour. Is that okay with you, Kevin, if we just jump on? I think there's Ben who said got a question there on there. If anyone wants to raise their hand, just press the hand raise and we'll bring you in on a live question. We prefer it that way, then we can have a bit of an interaction with you. If anybody's there's a couple of hand raises there. So I'll bring Benny into that one. So hi, Ben, can you just unmute your microphone? Can you hear us? Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, yeah. You had a question, but if you ask us the question, it'd be perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking my question. Basically, I got 140K sitting in cash in pension, in 2 different pensions. The one is with Fidelity and one is with one of the Leicester companies. It's called City Trustees, Armatuley Woods. And they didn't do well at all. So I just put it in the cash. So it's been there for 1 year now. I'm really concerned about that. What is the best I can do, please?
Well, the way to think about it is the fact that you've taken money out of the market and you put your money in cash. You know it's not a long-term solution, but the only alternative you'll have with the pensions you've got will be cash or the stock market, and none of them will fill you with any enthusiasm, as I can tell. So the option is to think about, well, what do you know or what could you learn how to do better yourself? And if some of the ideas that Andrew was sharing, or if you're already into property that you could do, then if you imagine that this 140,000, which is not an insubstantial sum of money, is it? I mean, that's, if somebody said, give you a check today and said, here you are, Vinu, here's 140 grand, you'd have a good day. That's a good amount of money. Why wouldn't you use it to the best effect? The way I always ask people to think about is, if somebody gave you that check today, would you put it straight back with Fidelity or straight back into cash, or would you do something else? And if the answer is I'd do something else, find a way for your pension to allow that something else to happen. And usually it means exploring SSAS. Okay, it usually means that, because if you're into property, it's a perfect pension for property. If you need a business, or you have to have the intention to create one. So as long as you either have a limited company, and most property people do these days, or you're willing to create one, and then, you know, we can teach you what you need to learn in that period of time when it's being set up, then you can get access to that money for this and many other strategies, things that Andrew's been showing you, things you might want to do yourself. So I'd just say the simple thing to do is don't sit on that money in cash. For the long term, it's just going to frustrate you continually. Is reach out, you know, drop an email to the contact I gave you, hello@wealthbuilders.co.uk. We'll send you some videos on SSAS to build your knowledge slowly. There's no race. It's nothing quick here. It's a 90-day process to create a SaaS anyway, because HMRC have got to approve each one. And we have 100% success rate. And we don't charge anybody anything if we don't get them through. So nothing to lose at all by just opening your mind and asking a few more questions beyond that one there. Does that sound all right?
Yeah, I actually already got a company, limited company, opened up for residential. I'm starting off with residential properties.
Okay.
But because of the confusion in the COVID situation, not sure whether the price is going to fall or. But anyway, I got remortgaged and the cash was ready only a couple of months back.
Okay.
So I'm actively looking for the deal. So it's very hard for me to put my mind. I'm a full-time employee as well.
Right.
So it's very hard for me to put residential plus employment plus new thing commercial. So that is why I was looking for a quick solution from any expert, so that while I can learn peacefully while that money is working. So instead of sitting that in the cash and then start learning. Yeah. So
well, the other way to do that is to combine the learning. Do you remember the case study I gave you between Chris and Christopher, where the exchange that took place was a combination of a loan was made as a bridge.
Yeah.
The interest was paid back with the first legal charge. So it was a very secure loan, decent rate of return. Obviously rates of returns will differ, but let's say you get a good rate of return and all the knowledge to perhaps learn these skills, of commercial or commercial to residential, which is really where big opportunities lie. It's very difficult to see how big opportunities lie within purely the buy-to-let space or the residential space, because the market's already pricing very high in there. Surely there'll be opportunities, but learning another skill of how to create more. And look, I know it's difficult, Vinu. That's the reason why wealthy people have worked hard to get there. If it were that easy, everybody would do it. But it sounds like, you're here, you're giving time today, take the next step forward and either find a way to connect with somebody you trust or reach out to me and I'll help you understand how to find people to trust, and just sign up to Nimbus and see how you could find developers yourself or active in the area that you perhaps want to look at. So there are many solutions, but what I wouldn't want to do is overwhelm you with the ideas that you close down like a thermostat, like 28 degrees, click, right? The whole thing shut down. Find one thing to do, take one action from this, and whatever that action is. And if you want to explore SaaS, I'd be delighted to help you understand, because you've got two things going, a decent sum of money. Actually got three things going, a decent sum of money, a limited company already, and a brain that's already frustrated. So you put those three to work like a 3-pin plug, boom, you're going to get some power that results. Just make sure you switch it on.
So that's the question. You've almost gone that learning journey on the bridging to start with. So go on the learning journey with the developer. You got the first legal charge, so you're going to get your investment back, or very likely to get your investment back, and you can sort of push it.
Yeah. Is there any possible, Kevin, to put me in touch with someone so I can trust or someone who
Sure, but I won't. You'll understand that I don't give anybody's names out online for obvious reasons, right? So my developer partners have worked very hard to find, to nurture and develop. So we need to find that there are good fits between people, not just a good fit one way.
Can we suggest dropping you an email, Kevin? Is that the best thing?
Yeah. hello@wealthbuilders.co.uk. Yeah.
Okay, fine. I'll do it. Thank you so much.
Good luck with that. It's definitely worth pursuing, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Is that okay? Cheers.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Question?
Sorry. Raj, did you want to ask your question live? Is that okay? So you've got a question there. Do you want to ask that now, or can you hear us or not? Is he not? Oh, maybe I've not done that correctly, have I? So they said Raj there. So you've got your hand up. That's talk. Okay, so that's. If you're just unmute, Raj, do you want to ask your question?
Sorry. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. How are you doing?
Hi. Again, a great presentation you guys are doing. I try to listen to as many as possible, so it's been great. Just want to know, Kevin, what are your typical charges in relation to setting the deals up?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So you know when you set up, you're connecting two people together, a developer and a JV partner. I assume you charge both parties, or would you just charge us to set up the deal? Is that how you get paid?
Are you a developer?
Yeah, I'm trying to get into that. Yes.
Okay. So the way to answer that question is the typical cost that somebody might pay would probably be somewhere between 1% and 2%.
Okay.
Right. So it's not a lot of money, but what we do is we work with a community. Okay. So we invite people into the community based on shared values.
Yeah.
Based on track record, based on willingness to create the document that I shared, and based on my new ability to go and look exactly how active people are in their field. And we're quite meticulous about due diligence. You know, we will look at land registry checks and credit checks and social media checks and look for assets and liabilities, because the number one thing, Raj, that investors want is that security of their money. And we do our damnedest to make sure that we've, evaluated the financial footprint of someone, followed by a resonance check with me. Do we get on? And then thirdly, like, how active are you? What's the likely flow? What are you looking for? And try and make a match. It takes time to build these things, right? So saying there's no successful overnights here, but it's a good question, and reach out. And the first thing I'd ask anybody to do is have a go at creating that 10 pillars of trust document. My experience is most people don't, and that's okay, because then they're not right partner for me. Because creating a document and starting, and I'll send you all the examples anyway, so it's cut and paste really, it's child's play really. Then if you do it, that shows you're committed to raising money, and that's what I look for.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, Raj.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for your question. Does anybody else, any more questions? We've got a few on the thing. I think we've all asked about, do we do face-to-face training? Jeets after that question. I think we have done a lot of that sort of stuff in the past. Obviously with COVID and the restrictions about getting together, I think we're still, in theory, supposed to be working from home where we can, can't we? So at the moment we're doing a lot of online stuff, but we have actually just had a new lady starting with us who on the partnerships, and perhaps we'll do a bit more events, possibly more in the autumn. But we want to follow the guidelines as much as we possibly can. So at the moment we're all remote, but again, you can drop on our deals clinics. You've got the events on Thursday. By all means, ask one of the team to give you a bit of time. You can book your slots in, can't you, Andrew, about a demo. You can book yourself a bit of a feedback thing. It's all online, so you can book yourself a period of time when you want to. We'll get back to you. We'll do some screen shares. We can go through your stuff. So we're here to help you achieve your goals. So I think you're not missing anything by missing the face-to-face. I think in due course we'd like to do a bit more face-to-face and a bit of networking, old school. But
yeah, I think just in time. But yeah, I know we had great feedback from the sessions we did do sort of pre-COVID and everything. And yeah, I think as and when the time is right, then I think we'll have that. But I think part of more of as a hybrid offering, where we'll have probably a lot more online, because I think some of the feedback we did have when it was face to face is obviously it's in one location and we're dealing with people right across the country. So then we can do multiple, but if you've got someone up in the northeast and there's not many up there, then we might struggle to get up there. So
yeah, it's because nobody wants to go to the northeast, Andrew. That's the reason why.
I don't know. I'm who've come down.
I picked up your accent, sir.
There's lots of development projects there, aren't there, Andrew? There's loads of. Every time we go on a deals clip, there's always finding loads of opportunities.
I don't know. I can,
the thing it seems to me is just talking about generally what's happening is if we're talking about a tool that you demonstrated so ably in just a few moments how you could find something, including the street view in Cardiff. Why do you need to get in the room with anybody? You could find this and do your own deal clinics from the region where you are, and of course you don't need to pound the pavement where you are, do you? And as well, you could be looking as far flung as you need. So I think the leverage and the use of technology has been a perfect antidote, not quite a vaccine, but an antidote to what's happened. And I for one applaud it and would like to see
it was born out of Paul and my experience of we actually did a desktop reviews from these large companies, and we reviewed sort of 1,000 up to 6,000 sites through a systematic desktop review through data, and that's how we came up with Nimbus. That's how we did it way back in sort of.
I mean, you solved the problem, didn't you? I talked earlier on about solving the problem. You solved the problem.
Yeah.
Why come together in a room to kind of unsolve the problem when the tool's designed to help you do it from a desktop?
We do acknowledge there's an awful lot to learn. As you know, so I think we pride ourselves on that after sales or after, you know, that community. I know you're into that community, but we want to share, and we're constantly learning as well. We get new data sets, we learn all the time. We're a big part of us is about sharing that knowledge base and helping people. I think that's what's exciting about still. There is a lot there. There's a lot to be. But
I find it even just, you know, like, yeah, I would always want to get out and see the sites that I bought. But, you know, when I was operating as a developer, that, you know, tools like this didn't exist. And actually, you know, now I just think, yeah, it would have saved so much time, you know. So even if you still want to get out there and you want to see it in the flesh and get a feel for that, you know, for that property, then absolutely. But what this software will allow you to do is actually then save time going and looking at every single one. You can rule sites out very quickly and focus on the ones that do have potential. And if you do want to go and see those, then absolutely. But yeah, it's about using your time wisely, and this allows you to be so much more effective. You know,
we have an acquisitions manager for Spa that did said one of our early, you know, subscribers a long time ago, because we obviously had a pre-existing relationship with him, but he said he saved about 15,000 miles a year. He was driving around doing about 35,000 miles and got, I mean, he still did a lot, don't get me wrong, but got down to 20,000 by just adding that step of shortlisting your site, sticking into your workflows, doing that due diligence first, then getting into your car. But I mean, you talk about social responsibility at the outset in terms of one of your ROIs, you know, that is a significant, you know, approach for someone like Spa to go closer to sort of carbon neutral and stuff, which is
well, there's another carbon neutral way to do it, and also combine that with the ability to listen to a podcast and the ability to get fit at the same time.
Yeah.
Get on your bike, right, pedal around. You would have spotted that site, wouldn't you? One with the eaves there and the 2-story next to it. You would have spotted the airspace there. You just do that, take a photograph, go back on your Nimbus, get the address, and off you go. So you could combine yourself and get yourself super fit all at the same time. Maybe there'll be a little Nimbus session on that.
Okay, yeah, so but that's perfect. So
podcast coming soon. Yeah.
there's a few people, yeah. So if anybody's interested in having joined the deals session, there was an anonymous attendee that said interest in the deals. I'm not sure whether we can actually, might just need to put their details. I'm not sure.
Well, to be honest, what we'll do, we'll send that to everyone. I think there was a good chunk of people there that I think are interested. You know, we always like, you know, speaking to more people, understanding the kind of things they're looking at and how we can help you better, you know, with updates to the platform as well, going, you know, more sort of longer term. But so yeah, I think there's a, you know, decent reaction there. So we'll put that on Friday.
One more question, I think for you, may just quick one. There's Harley said, what happens to a SaaS when you have more than 12 people in the company? That's one to.
Yeah, you just have 2 SaaSes.
Simple as it.
That's simple. Just have another one. It's the same as you do what happens if when you got a people carrier and you got more than 7 kids, you just buy another one. That's the problem. You can have as many SaaS as you want. It's just that no individual SaaS can have more than 11 people in them.
Okay.
Yeah. Look, we've done thousands of SaaSes now, and we've mostly from SIP to SaaS, and a lot of people get confused with SIP and SaaS and think they're the same. It's a bit like getting confused between residential and commercial. You shouldn't really ever get confused, but people do. And we've never done one SaaS to SIP. Nobody's ever gone backwards. It's like a one-way valve. When people discover the power, they don't ever go backwards. You know, when they can lend to themselves, they can lend to other people, they can buy assets in cash. Just think about what Vinu was saying. You could buy something in cash. You know, you get a good deal at auction or in cash by having that money ready, willing, and able to work. So, and if you're not a SaaS owner and you're not like to be, but you're really good at what you do, and it's interesting, we'll be able to check out their activity now, which I said earlier on, which made me smile. If you're really good at what you do, connect anyway. If you don't want the information, just connect. You know, it's all about relationships. Just hit me on LinkedIn and say, Kevin, I'm a developer. I'd love to connect, because we're looking to work with good developers. So if you're half decent at what you do, just connect.
Perfect. Sarah's got one final question. I'll let her have that. She's asking you, Kevin, when you say bridge, is that just debt loan of any kind to a company, or is there a time restriction on the loan?
No, I mean, it's a good question, and thank you for asking it. But the only reason I use bridge is because fundamentally I'm a teacher in life. So the reason I use buy, there's 7 of them normally, but I just did 3 today, buy, bridge, and borrow, just because it makes them all begin with B and it's easy to teach. So the bridge is just somebody else's project, right? That's all. And it can be for any term. It's what 2 people agree. So I've done bridges for 12 months. I've done bridges for 6 months. I've done bridges for 18 months. There's no restriction. It's what 2 people agree. It's that simple.
Yes, perfect. Well, that's a brilliant answer. So yeah, super thank you, she said. So that's brilliant. So I think that's about an hour and a quarter. I think that's probably long enough for everybody to absorb everything there is to say about SSASs and the opportunities. Obviously, there's, as I say, I think both parties, there's an awful lot more to learn from Kevin and the SSAS ecosystem. But it does sound like there's an awful, there's a great opportunity to create cash, I guess, to put into property opportunities. And then Andrew's got there's a lot of strategies that Paul's got. My brother, and obviously works with Andrew very close in the product development in terms of those options and how you can use that. So there's a great opportunity to raise cash. There's a great opportunity to find opportunities as well, isn't there?
Yeah, and then things happen, don't they? I mean, look, we in our community now, 5,000 people, average of 300,000, 1.5 billion. That's not quite 2.2 trillion, but it's a decent sum of money,
isn't it? So
it's a lot of money. And while of course not all of that's available, but nonetheless, there's much of it is people looking to lend and learn. They want to connect their money with third parties. It's something that's important to them because, like Vina was saying, he's got a full-time job. He probably doesn't have the time to research and find all of these people. And where do you go to find them to trust? Well, that's the reason we've got the community, is to make that happen.
And finally, I said we'd have a quick 3 questions if you'd like any more feedback. Obviously, you've got access to do it. So would you like any more feedback from Kevin and the resources? Just click yes or no on that poll that we've put up there. If you want to claim your free trial, you can do it yourself, or we can set you up with that straight away. And would you like to book an introduction to Nimbus? That's the webinar tomorrow at 2 o'clock, isn't it? So if anybody wants further detail, that's just another way for you to contact us, and we'll just fill that poll out, and we'll make it all happen for you. I'll give that another couple more seconds, but you will be able to contact us or Kevin, and we can contact you. So
maybe just while everyone's putting in their answers into the poll there, the session's actually on Thursday, I think, rather than tomorrow. But the Venu's just saying he's getting a bounce back from the hello@wealthbuilders.co.uk. Is that definitely the right?
It's definitely the right email address. So easiest thing to just reach out on LinkedIn, if you would. I'll get that checked out, but we get hundreds and hundreds of emails, and we haven't had any bounce backs. If there's more than one, then I know there's a problem. Who was the person? I'll look out for that, please.
That was Venu.
Venu, right? Okay.
We'll make that happen. But
I mean, just click yes here, then Venu, and then I'll be able to send it to you directly.
Okay.
Someone else is saying it's working for them. So
Working for them. Yeah.
Okay. Brilliant. Well, I think it's all left for me to just thank you, Kevin, very much for your time today. I've certainly learned an awful lot again from one of these sessions, and I hope it's been useful for everybody else on the webinar. So yeah, we'll draw it to a close. If anybody wants any details, we'll get in touch and we can contact you. And I think just for me to say that I'm Simon Davis, we're Nimbus Maps, and we're passionate about helping you achieve your property investment and development goals. Thank you ever so much, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.